My name's Darren Cooke. I'm the CEO of FireFly Metals, and we're developing the Green Bay Copper Gold project in Newfoundland in Canada. What that is a large-scale, high-grade copper gold deposit, and we think we can get this into production very, very quickly, and also continue to grow the resource and turn it into a large-scale copper deposit.
Darren, good to meet you.
Thank you.
Enjoying yourself at this conference?
I'm loving this conference. It's
Yes.
fantastic. A lot of investors are really positive vibe, and really great to see the Canadian mining space really enthusiastic about developing projects.
Absolutely. And a lot of industry as well, sniffing around.
A lot of industry as well.
Yeah, and I think these days that equates to a new form of access to capital.
100%. There's a lot of other companies looking for strategic positions. There's a lot of companies looking for investments outside normal channels. So really interesting.
Tell me about the asset. When did you pick it up?
So we picked up this asset in August 2023. We got it out of administration. So, we did a lot of work on this thing to understand why things didn't work for the previous operators. And what was really clear to us, and I'm a geologist by background and I've spent many years reviewing projects for companies like Northern Star, what was really clear was there was nothing wrong with the ore body. This was a large-scale ore body, but what it suffered from was a lack of capital investment and a lack of a coherent strategy to actually do the right things from a mining perspective to maximise the value of the deposit. So we saw all the issues that caused it to fail previously as entirely solvable.
And an opportunity.
And a huge opportunity.
So let's kind of talk about you and the team first, because I know a few of the team, and I know what they're capable of, and I know there's a time frame that they've achieved these things in. But give us a bit more detail on your background, where have you worked relevant to what you're doing now?
Yeah, well, look, my background, I'm a geologist by background and done a fair bit of engineering work in the background. I worked all across Australia and North America for companies like Barrick and Newmont. And before I joined this group, I was with Northern Star for 7 years, and obviously that's one of the more successful Australian gold companies. So, one of those years was in Kalgoorlie running the operational geology. But after that, I was in the business development group for 7 years. When we bought the super pit, we merged Saris and we bought Pogo. So, got to experience a lot of different skill sets rather than just being a geologist.
Yeah.
And look, the team that I joined, the reason that I joined this group was guys like Steve Parsons, Mike Naylor, and Kevin Tomlinson. Really great track record in building companies, building assets, and really good access to capital and investment markets. So I think, between the four of us, our skill sets really complement each other, and that's what's going to make this a big success.
Right. Okay. So you got a team of project builders, company builders, mine builders, as well. Yeah. So what is the plan? Just expand on that opening statement you made.
Yeah. So look, what our plan is twofold, really. We really want to continue the growth and demonstrate the world-class scale of the deposit. So, we are really looking at focusing on exploration. We currently have 6 rigs underground, and we're looking at we've got one on surface and getting a second rig on surface very shortly. There's a lot of growth potential there. And then what we're going to do in the background concurrently is really do the mining studies and the engineering work to right size the infrastructure to the asset, so we can really erase some of those problems of the past, which were purely fundamental economic and mining issues. We're going to rebuild it with the appropriate scale infrastructure.
Okay, and let's take a deeper dive on that one, because underinvestment in the past, cash constraint, because of copper price, or they were just sucking money out and not reinvesting?
Look, it was an AIM-listed company that just could not raise equity, and what ended up happening is they just kept taking on layer upon layer of debt. So the repayments were burdensome. And then the last hurrah was to put a stream on it, so they lost the gold revenue, which is a significant component. So it all imploded from a financial point of view. Through the insolvency process, we were able to wipe all the debt, the stream that was on it, all the unfavorable contracts, including the offtake agreements. So we really do have this asset unencumbered. And look, just from the technical point of view of why it didn't work, there was a real mismatch between the scale of the infrastructure and the deposit. Right, so to put it into really simplistic terms, when we bought this, we had a 40 million tonne resource. The processing plant that they were using was 500,000 tonnes per annum. So it would take 80 years to actually process what they had when we bought it. And I'm not an accountant, but I know in year 80, the NPV is not so great. Yeah. So, what we saw was the opportunity to right-size the infrastructure, increase production, and bring forward the earnings. Since we've had the project, we've done 90,000 metres of drilling now. Yeah. We've increased the resource up to 60 million tonnes, and we expect that growth to continue. So now we're looking at building a bigger mill on site, so you don't have the transport costs that they previously had. The mill was 40 kilometres away. The port was 140 kilometres away, and we've solved those issues by building the mill on site and getting in access to a deep water port that's only 6 kilometres away. So that totally changes the economics.
It absolutely does. Tell us a little bit more about what you're deploying 6 drills underground. It means you've got a very good line of sight as to what you think you've got today and what you've got to get after. So can you give us a bit more background on that? More data, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so look, we know that this thing's going to grow. Like, as I said before, the last resource update was 60 million tonnes. The ore body is open. We just put out some results a couple of weeks ago that shows that the ore body continues at least 200 metres outside of the current resource, and one of those hits was 25 metres at 5% copper equivalent true thickness. So we know the high grade continues. Yeah. We've also done downhole geophysics, and we know that we've got a conductor that goes 700 metres in front of that drill hole. And look, although you can't guarantee it until you drill it, there's every indication from every time we've drilled those conductors at that orientation that the ore body will likely continue. So we know that the resource growth is going to continue.
Right. Is there anything kind of comparable in the region?
No, not really in this particular region. This is like something that's quite unique. But, we know with VMS deposits is they're never orphans. They always occur in clusters. They're never one-off. So, that's why we've started accumulating more ground in the district. And that's what our surface rigs are focusing on. And, also in the last couple of weeks, we put out some drill results from our first exploration campaign, which shows we're onto another one of these high-grade shoots. So we're expecting the regional exploration to come through with more discoveries to grow on what's already a great resource base.
Right, and what's the average grade mined previously?
So the previous grade was around the 2% copper mark, just under. And we're going to mine around that mark as well, so it'll be probably around the 2% copper.
This is well above global average, fair to say.
Oh, look, it's well above global averages. And, a lot of the major copper discoveries and the copper deposits are these large-scale porphyries like you get in South America. And, some of the advantages that we've got over those is that they require a lot of time and billions and billions of dollars in capital to get them up and running. And the timeframes can be 10, 20 years from discovery to production. So, the advantage we've got is we can be in production in a very short time frame for very limited capital and generate more cash flow because our grades are so high. So take advantage of the current copper market, which is quite strong.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, hot news off the press. This morning, you've raised quite a bit of money. Yeah. What's that for?
Yeah, so look, that's to really accelerate our surface exploration.
How much is that, first of all?
It's around $77 to $80 million with the capacity to take overs. Bought deal, and look, part of the strategy there was we're dual listed now on Australia and Toronto Stock Exchange, and one of the things we've been suffering from is we've listed in Toronto in December, but we haven't had any liquidity in Toronto because we didn't need to raise capital. But there'll be a fair chunk of this raise in Toronto, so we can encourage trading in Toronto. So that's one of the key reasons. But in terms of what we're going to spend the money on, accelerating the surface exploration, because as I said before, these things are not orphans, and I'm really confident we're going to find more. Secondly, we're going to continue to expand our underground development footprint to put the rigs in position to continue drilling and growing the ore body from underground. And that funding will also get us through our studies, feasibility studies, and there's even enough there to pay for early works. So, we want to move this thing towards production as quickly as possible. And this latest capital raise will also, enable us to do that. Some of the other reasons that we really pulled the trigger now was because of the global uncertainty. When Mr. Trump had Liberation Day, like every other copper stock, we got hammered. We went down from $1.10 to 68 cents in April. We got back up to $1.09. So, we want to insulate ourselves from any global uncertainties and whatever Mr. Trump decides to tweet that could affect our share price, we are now secured all the way through to the start of construction with this funding.
It's amazing. And just on that share register, is it mainly gone to institutional, the 77 to 80 million?
It'll be mainly institutional.
But we are out
of Canada and the US and London. BlackRock's our largest shareholder.
Right.
But we will be doing a share purchase placement for our retail investors in Australia as well.
Right. Okay. And in terms of the mine itself, obviously it's underground. Can you give us how deep are we talking about at the moment?
So look, the great
and talk about the ore body in terms of the extent. Is it open? Which directions?
Yeah. So the ore body itself is fascinating. It's a high-grade VMS, but it's a giant VMS. VMSs can sometimes be small and limited scale, but this thing is a unicorn, if you like. It's the strike length of this thing's over 3 kilometres now, and the only VMS deposits you see like that are things like Kid Creek and LaRonde and some of those giant Canadian deposits. So we think we're under something pretty special. The ore body consists of two parts. There's an upper high-grade VMS, which contains most of the copper and the gold, and that's like a massive sulfide channel.
Yeah.
So super high-grade, averages 4.5% to 5% copper equivalent.
Yeah.
And then beneath that, you've got this big broad zone of stringer stockwork type veinlets of copper. Yeah. And that thing can be over 200 metres in width, over 200 metres vertical, and we now know that the strike extent of that's over 2.5 kilometres. So the bulk of our resource tonnes are in that zone in the footwall. But the great thing is because the historic mining, the mill was so small, they really did focus on that high grade upper zone. So they've barely scratched the surface of the bulk zone. And even though the mine is currently 900 metres below surface, that bulk mineralisation starts just 200 metres below surface. So it's not deep. There's a shallow component to this ore body that will enable us to go.
Now you mentioned obviously project builders, mine builders, and in an expedited manner, with Bellevue, we saw that, was it 5 years from discovery? Yeah, right. How do you come at something like this? And obviously the grade is going to be very forgiving. Copper price seems to be making it a nice reaction, and then the gold component too, which is everyone's benefiting from that. Is there some kind of systematic approach to an existing mine like this, or can you go and high-grade certain areas, get the cash flow going to expand self-fund, I guess, the expansion?
Yeah, so that's the sort of strategy that we're looking at. So what we're planning on doing is starting out relatively modest, a 1.8 million tonne per annum plant, and building that on site. And look, I think people will be surprised how quickly we can get the approvals for that.
Right.
And then beyond that, we'll see what happens. We're not committing to any particular size or scale.
Yeah. Just get the money flowing.
Get the money flowing. Keep drilling and find out the ultimate scale of the prize that we're dealing with, because it's still growing. We don't know what it's going to be. And then, if it turns out the way that it's looking like at the moment, then we'll think about right-sizing that infrastructure once we've got a better idea of how big the thing is we're dealing with.
And how are you feeling about the markets at the moment in terms of the type of capital, cost of capital available to you? Because obviously this gets the recent raise, today's raise, gets you through to potentially some early works as well.
Yep.
I don't know entirely what that covers, but you'll need a chunk of change after that, right?
That's right.
And how much of that is kind of rehabilitation? How much of that is expansion? And how much of that is future optimization?
Yeah. So look, in terms of the funding, we're expecting no issues with being able to fund this, and there's a number of reasons for that. As I mentioned earlier, we were able to get rid of the offtake agreement.
Yeah.
And this concentrate historically was 96% recovery. It was all between 27 and 29% copper concentrate grade with between 8 and 12 grams gold. No deleterious elements, so there was no arsenic, bismuth, antimony, things you get penalised for, right? So, given that there's negative TCs, RCs, and where things are with the copper landscape, with the shortage of good quality concentrate, we are absolutely inundated with offers from offtake partners to get involved to help fund this. We're also getting inundated with central credit agencies looking to offer us cheap debt to secure the concentrate for their smelters from Europe.
Yeah.
So, there's lots of options available for us to fund this.
We've seen some really kind of interesting deals on the copper front, which is going to fund the development of the gold component of a few mines in North America
Correct.
And Canada, which is kind of interesting, and coming out of Europe.
Yep.
nice, affordable capital.
That's right. And look, the great thing about Newfoundland is it's so far east. People forget. Like, I fly from St John's to London quicker than I can fly from Perth to Sydney. It is that close to Europe. So previously the concentrate was shipped to Spain, but it's really easy to get it on the boat. The port will only be 6 kilometres away, and we can get it to the European markets very, very quickly.
Yeah. And how are you feeling about kind of building up the team to kind of get back in there? Obviously, local population looks like skilled.
Yeah, the population's fantastic, and those people that are familiar with Canada, it's pretty well known that a lot of Newfoundlanders actually leave and go and work in Alberta, work on the mainland, and a lot of those guys want to come home. So to give you an analogy, we recruited a mining panel to do our exploration development underground. We needed 3 crews, and I'll tell you what, in Australia it would take months to recruit 3 whole mining crews. We had it done in a week, and they were all Newfoundlanders wanting to come back and be home every night. So we found that the underground skilled labour is quite easy for us to get. We're even attracting now some really good technical people. So we've just recently put on a VP of metallurgy, a VP of exploration, and what we're doing now is building the team that will take us forward to construction, because my pure philosophy always is that when we do our mining studies, I want that team to be there to execute, so they're accountable for what they put in those studies, because I think we see a lot of examples of where a study team rolls in, puts out the numbers, and then they ride off into the sunset and someone else is left carrying the can. What we're trying to do is build that execution team now while they're doing the study, so they're accountable for delivery as well.
It's kind of interesting landscape at the moment for copper. Not too many high-grade copper projects out there, and certainly not projects with the kind of capex that kind of comes with something like this. So not a lot of competition in North America, I would go, not let alone Canada. I think you've done a good job bringing this thing up.
And not a lot in Australia. I mean, that was one of the attractions. This is very unique opportunity, and when we look at the numbers, when we're looking at what we think this will ultimately produce, there's none of those deposits in the hands of juniors. They're all owned by mid-caps and majors. So for investors out there that want to invest in junior copper, this is a very unique story.
Gives me, Darren.
Nice to meet you.
Appreciate you coming talking to us, because obviously I imagine not a lot of sleep last night after getting that press release signed off. But it's good to get the money away, right?
It's fantastic, and it just gives us stability. It gives us a runway in it. Steve and Mike and the team have done a great job funding me to do what I need to do, which is to deliver a mining operation.